They called her Miss Geraldine, never by her last name, never by her number, just Miss Geraldine, like a storybook villain who walked softly but left poison in every room she entered. She arrived at Lakemont Correctional Facility on a Tuesday morning, shackled at the ankles, wrists bound tight. No struggle, no sound. Her face was a stone mask, unreadable, unbothered, unimpressed. She had deep-set eyes like old wells, not empty, but bottomless. The kind of eyes you didn't look into for long. She was 68 years old. Small frame. Silver hair twisted into a tight bun. Her prison file listed her as Geraldine Mosley, convicted on 2 counts of aggravated fraud and obstruction of justice. Nothing violent. Nothing that made her a threat. But the air changed when she entered a room. Even the other inmates noticed. The young ones called her church lady. The older ones whispered she wasn't what she seemed. She never raised her voice. She never asked for anything twice. And she never, ever smiled. Her cell was the last one on the south wing. 12A clean. Meticulous. A Bible near the pillow. A folded quilt from a women's group in Georgia. A tin of peppermint oil for headaches. She sat straight when she read, hands clasped over her lap like a schoolgirl, and watched everyone. The guards, the cameras, the shadows. Officer Ramon Carter noticed her first. 28, fresh out of training, full of purpose. He'd been assigned to Lakemont 6 weeks when she arrived. His mother had died of cancer the year before, and he still wore her St. Jude medal under his vest. He believed in rules. He believed in good people. And Miss Geraldine reminded him of someone. His grandmother, maybe, or a Sunday school teacher long forgotten. The kind who taught you to whisper your prayers and never sit with your knees apart. She asked him very softly if she could have extra time in the chapel. 10 minutes, he said. She nodded, smiled faintly, and said, God will remember that. From then on, she asked for him. Officer Carter never thought much of it. She never asked for anything strange. Sometimes an extra blanket. Sometimes a pencil and paper. Once a hymnal. Nothing he couldn't justify. And then came Officer Maltravers. Older. 42. Divorced twice. High blood pressure. Kids he barely saw. He called her ma'am. Not out of protocol, but because something in her voice triggered a reflex. She reminded him of order, of old discipline, of a world that didn't expect him to be soft. Geraldine once asked about his arthritis. I see the way you rub your thumb, she said. Try wrapping it at night with cayenne balm. It helps. He laughed and said she sounded like his aunt. I've been around, she replied. I notice things people forget to hide. He started stopping by her cell during lights out, just for a few minutes, just to talk, just to hear that calm voice say something that made the weight on his chest feel a little lighter. She never flirted, never touched them, never suggested anything unseemly. That was the brilliance of it. She didn't need seduction. She used recognition. She made them feel seen, not as men, not even as guards, but as broken creatures in need of kindness. Officer Naomi Finch was the only woman working night shifts on Geraldine's block. 35, unmarried, no children, kept to herself, tough, quiet, and immune to games. She noticed Geraldine, of course. Everyone did, but she kept her distance. That changed the night she saw Geraldine crying. It was barely a sound, just a hitch in breath. Naomi passed by 12A and saw her hunched on the cot, fingers trembling over the pages of a Bible. It didn't feel manipulative. It felt real. And in that moment, Naomi saw something fragile beneath the calm. Grief. Naomi opened the slot. You all right? Geraldine looked up, eyes wet. I lost someone. Long ago. Today would have been her birthday. No lies. No theatrics. Just sorrow. Naomi didn't say much. Just slid a paper napkin through the bars. Geraldine took it, dabbed her face, and said, You remind me of her. Strong but tired. Naomi walked away with something tight around her ribs that wouldn't loosen. They all did. That was the thing. Each of them. Carter, Travers, Finch. They carried a little piece of her voice in their head after every shift. Something she'd said. Something she made them feel. Even Warden Lawrence noticed. A tall, stoic man who rarely walked the units. He paused outside cell 12A one day and stared. She stood motionless, eyes closed, humming something soft and slow. "She give you trouble?" he asked a passing officer. "No, sir. Quiet as a ghost." "She's not quiet," the warden murmured. "She's calculating." But he didn't order surveillance. He didn't shuffle assignments. Geraldine was a 68-year-old fraudster with arthritis and peppermint oil. What harm could she do? He didn't know that 4 lives were already shifting in her orbit, that she was listening when they talked about money, when they talked about loneliness, that she noticed how Carter hesitated near her door, how Travers rubbed his hands in the cold, how Finch lingered too long at her words. She didn't touch anyone. Not yet. She didn't pass notes or ask for favors. Not yet. She just waited, patient, composed, deliberate. And every night, from the window slit in cell 12A, she watched the sky like it was counting down something only she knew. Not judgment, not mercy. Something colder, something quieter, something final. It began the way infection always begins, not with blood, not with fever, but with trust. Miss Geraldine never reached out. She waited for them to come to her. Officer Ramon Carter was the first. She never touched him, not at first. She didn't need to. She asked questions that sounded innocent, but cut into the places he tried to keep hidden. "How's your sister?" she asked one night. "The one with lupus." He froze. He hadn't mentioned it to anyone. She just said, "You carry things in your face, child. I used to do the same." From then on, she'd leave him folded prayers. Tiny pieces of paper with hand-penned verses. Psalms, Proverbs, notes of encouragement. One read, "Even Job was tested. Even Joseph was betrayed. You're not alone." He kept it in his vest pocket for weeks. It was Carter who brought her the ceramic mug. A small kindness. He said it came from the warden's meeting room. No one would notice it missing. "Tea tastes better in a real cup," he said. She smiled gently and said, "So does trust." She drank from it slowly, eyes never leaving his. And when she bled from her lip one day, a cracked mouth from dry heat, she dabbed it carefully and handed the mug back to him, without rinsing it. He never thought to wash it either. Officer Malik Travers broke in a different way. He was heavier, slower, less idealistic. His body hurt in the mornings, and his pension didn't look like it used to. Geraldine didn't flatter him. She didn't offer comfort. She offered revenge. "This place don't respect you," she said one evening after lockdown. "You give it your back, your nights, your years, and what do they give you? A half-worn uniform and a cheap plaque when you break." He grunted but didn't disagree. She taught him how to move money. Slow, careful, invisible. Showed him crypto accounts written in a wrinkled notebook she claimed belonged to her nephew. Said he could start small, buy groceries for his daughter, without asking his ex make a dent in those medical bills. Feel like a man again. When he made his first $2,000 in a week, he smiled for the first time in months. The next night, she asked for a razor. "The one they gave me's dull," she said. He brought it, wrapped in tissue. She took it without touching him. 3 nights later, she returned it, wrapped in the same tissue. Dry blood hidden inside the fold. Officer Naomi Finch was harder. Too careful, too guarded. But even steel bends if you heat it slowly enough. Geraldine started with silence, then scripture, then books. They'd talk through the door slot, Morrison, Hurston, Baldwin. Geraldine listened without interruption. Naomi hadn't been listened to in years, not without correction or dismissal. When Geraldine said, "You'd make a good teacher," Naomi's throat tightened. Then came the night shift storm, the power outage. 37 minutes of total black. Protocol was to lock down and remain alert. Naomi passed 12A with her flashlight and found Geraldine standing near the bars, calm, unaffected. "This place feels honest in the dark," Geraldine said. Naomi laughed just once, a small, unguarded sound. "I used to be married," Naomi said suddenly. He left, took everything but the dog. Even that ran away eventually. Geraldine didn't ask why. She just said, "That wasn't your fault." Naomi stared at her, flashlight trembling slightly in her grip. "How do you know?" "I can feel it," Geraldine whispered. "Some women carry grief in their wrists. I see it every time you hand me my tray." Naomi didn't respond, but she didn't walk away either. 2 weeks later, Naomi passed her a handkerchief she kept in her locker, a soft one, blue lace on the corners. Geraldine pressed it to her cheek gently and said, "This is the first kind thing I've touched in years." When she returned it, Naomi put it in her coat pocket and forgot about it until it stained her fingers red one morning. Just a little, barely a smear, but it was enough. The fourth was Officer Dean Wallace. No one even knew when it started. Wallace kept it himself. Clean-shaven, always on time. He'd lost a son to fentanyl, buried the boy at 17. No one talked to him unless they had to. Geraldine didn't either, not for months, until one night she recited a poem aloud. Wallace paused outside her cell and asked what it was. "Clifton," she said. "Lucille, won't you celebrate with me?" "You'd like it." He didn't reply, but the next night, he stood outside her cell again. Eventually, they stopped talking altogether. He just stood near her door while she hummed, read, or folded laundry. Quiet was their language. Then came the night she collapsed. It was a stage fall, a faint. She timed it perfectly during rounds. Wallace rushed in, broke protocol, and held her up. She coughed once, wet, and turned her head, blood on his collar, his hand, his cheek. He panicked, helped her to the cot, called for medical, wrote it off as nothing. He washed his uniform twice that night, but it wasn't enough. 4 guards, for stories, no sex, no overt contact, nothing anyone could report, just a mug, a razor, a handkerchief, a drop of blood. She infected them with care, with recognition, with wounds disguised as tenderness. They didn't see the pattern, not until their bodies started breaking. And by the time they did, Miss Geraldine had already moved on, to observation, to waiting, to whatever came next. They say viruses can't think, but some infections aren't biological. They're psychological. And Geraldine, she didn't spread illness. She spread intimacy with intent. It started with Officer Carter, a weight in his chest he couldn't explain. At first, he thought it was exhaustion, the night shifts, the noise, the prayers that no longer worked. Then came the night sweats, the nausea, the 10 pounds that fell off him like sand shaken from a coat. He skipped meals, then shifts, then church. He didn't say anything until the sores appeared. A nurse at urgent care frowned when she saw them. "Have you ever been tested for HIV?" His heart dropped. "No," he whispered. She touched his shoulder, gentle but firm. "It's time." The results came back a week later. Positive. Officer Ramon Carter sat in his car for nearly an hour after the call, staring at his reflection in the rearview mirror like it might offer a different answer. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just whispered Geraldine's name, once like a prayer. He didn't tell the prison. He told no one. But the infection didn't stop with him. Officer Travers collapsed in the staff locker room. He thought it was a panic attack. His blood pressure had been rising for weeks. He'd been hiding symptoms under energy drinks and ibuprofen. When paramedics took him out on a stretcher, he looked small, like a man finally undone. He tested positive 2 days later. So did Officer Naomi Finch. Her sister found her passed out in the kitchen, dinner still on the stove. The hospital said it was anemia, malnutrition, dehydration. But when the lab work came in, the room fell silent. She refused to believe it. At first, there's no one, she told the doctor. "No one you remember," the doctor said gently. "But your immune markers don't lie." Finch didn't cry. She just got up, walked to the bathroom, and vomited until her throat bled. She never returned to Lakemont. The prison didn't make the connection. Not yet. They call the infections unrelated. Coincidence. Unfortunate overlap. A spokesperson issued a brief statement. "We are aware of health concerns among select staff members. No threat to security has been identified." But Officer Dean Wallace connected the dots. He hadn't tested himself yet, but he knew. He felt it in his breath, in the way his body no longer recovered after long shifts, in the way his gums bled when he brushed. He went to the infirmary quietly, asked for a test, didn't give a reason. He waited 2 days, then 3. On the 4th day, he called out sick, drove 6 hours to his ex-wife's house in Maryland, sat in the driveway for 40 minutes, and left without knocking. That night, he stood in front of cell 12A for 13 minutes. Didn't say a word, just watched Geraldine. She didn't blink, didn't move. She whispered something, but it was too soft to catch. Warden Lawrence ordered an internal review. The rumors had begun. Inmates whispering about curses, staff joking nervously about patient zero. A janitor claimed he saw Geraldine kissing Officer Carter. A nurse said she found red stains on a handkerchief used by Finch. A CO swore she caught Wallace letting Geraldine touch his hand through the bars. All speculation. No proof. No camera footage. Cell 12 of surveillance had been out intermittently for weeks. Electrical interference, the tech team reported. Warden Lawrence didn't believe it, but when he walked past her cell, she was always still, always polite, always wrapped in that same aura of harmless age. She wasn't breaking rules. She was breaking men. One nurse pulled Geraldine's sealed medical file. 3 pages were blacked out. The last test on record was dated 6 years before she was transferred to Lakemont. No follow-ups. No retests. The name of the physician was redacted. The nurse brought it to the warden. "This doesn't make sense," she said. He read it. "Read it again. Get her retested," he ordered. But the test never came. Because 3 days later, Geraldine Mosley was found dead, face down on her cot, eyes closed, hands folded over her stomach. No sign of struggle. No sign of suicide. No note. Just silence. And a thin line of blood at the corner of her mouth. It was Officer Wallace who found her. He didn't knock, didn't speak, just slid open the view slot at 6:07 a.m. to deliver her breakfast tray, and froze. Miss Geraldine wasn't sitting at her desk with her Bible open like usual. She wasn't kneeling in prayer or folding laundry like clockwork. She was face down. Still, her body looked oddly peaceful, like it had simply turned off. A nurse arrived 3 minutes later. Then 2 others. Then the warden. By 6:21 a.m., the unit was on lockdown. They wheeled her out on a stretcher with a sheet over her body, clean, white, tucked tight. Her hands had been folded on her chest. Her lips were dry, slightly parted, and at the corner of her mouth was a single thread of red, like the last sentence of a confession too dangerous to speak aloud. No one could say when she died. No guard had spoken to her in hours. The overnight logs were incomplete, and the camera pointed at cell 12A had once again mysteriously shorted out between 2:13 a.m. and 4:42 a.m. Just enough time for something to happen, or for nothing to happen at all. There were no signs of a struggle, no bruising, no blunt force. Her sheets were clean, her clothes folded neatly on the end of her cot. A ceramic mug sat on her nightstand, filled with water, a single peppermint bobbing like a ghost in the center. She hadn't left a note, hadn't made a final request. There was only one new object in the room, a thin, leather-bound book left under her pillow, a Bible, 1 page dog-eared, Psalm 109. Let his days be few, and let another take his office. The prison doctor filed the death as cardiac arrest pending autopsy, but the autopsy never came. A memo from the state arrived within 48 hours. Geraldine Mosley was a nonviolent inmate with no known medical concerns. Her death poses no security threat. Her remains are to be released to the state burial program per policy. Case closed. But no one believed that. Not really. Especially not the ones who touched her, been touched by her. Officer Carter didn't return to Lakemont after her death. He sat in his apartment for 2 straight days, blinds closed, the air thick with unspoken things. He pulled out the folded prayer note she'd once given him and read it 12 times. "You are not alone," it said, but he'd never felt more alone in his life. He burned the note in a glass bowl and watched the smoke curl toward the ceiling like a question he'd never be able to answer. Officer Naomi Finch developed a tremor in her left hand. She said it was from stress. But everyone knew. Her sister found her sitting at the edge of her bed 3 nights after the news, whispering to herself, "She never touched me. I wouldn't." But she did. She let Geraldine speak to the softest part of her. She let her guard down. And now her body felt like it belonged to someone else. Malik Travers came to work for 2 more days, said nothing, then quit. No formal notice. No goodbye. He packed everything into his trunk, drove south, and vanished. The only thing left in his locker was a folded slip of paper torn from the prison logbook. On it, Geraldine had written, "You don't have to stay buried just because someone forgot to dig you up." The warden didn't make a statement. Not to the press. Not to staff. Not even to the Department of Corrections. But he ordered the entire south wing of Lakemont repainted within a week. Cell 12A was emptied, scrubbed, reassigned. The new occupant lasted less than 3 days before requesting a transfer, said the room felt watched. Another inmate refused to walk past it without crossing herself. A maintenance worker swore. He heard humming one night after lights out. No cameras, no proof, just echoes. A nurse, curious and reckless, made one final request. She sent for Geraldine's sealed medical records from her last prison before Lakemont. They arrived 2 weeks later. Slim file, 1 thin folder. Inside, 3 pages. 1 test. Dated 7 years ago. Positive, HIV. Stamped and signed by a physician who died 6 months later under mysterious circumstances. The folder had been closed ever since. No retests. No mention in transfer files. No alert sent to the Lakemont staff. The nurse brought it to the warden. He read it once, then again. He didn't speak. He took the file, placed it in his desk drawer, and locked it. They never spoke of it again. But the whispers never stopped. About the woman in 12A, the one who bled quietly, who studied people like maps, who broke no rules and still shattered lives. She died without explanation, but no one called it peace. Because sometimes death isn't the end. Sometimes it's the last move in a game no one else knew they were playing. And Geraldine? She played it better than anyone. They never talked to each other. Not really. Not about her. Each one believed their connection to Geraldine was singular, special, isolated. But trauma makes patterns visible. And silence can scream if you listen hard enough. After her death, the 4 infected officers became shadows of their former selves. Ramon Carter left the state entirely. Moved to Tulsa. Changed his number. Started working security at a strip mall where nobody knew his name or the weight he carried. He never wore his badge again. He stopped praying. And every night, before closing, he sat in his car and read Saw 109 over and over like it owed him an explanation. Naomi Finch took a desk job at a juvenile rehab facility 3 towns over. She told herself she could still help people, still make something of her life. But every teenage girl she counseled reminded her of Geraldine, clever, guarded, wounded. One afternoon, a girl handed her a folded piece of paper with a poem scribbled on it. Naomi smiled, but her hands shook as she read it. She kept it in her wallet like a secret scar. Malik Travers developed insomnia. The kind that doesn't just rob you of sleep, it robs you of your past. He started writing down his memories, afraid they'd disappear. But the one he never wrote about was the night she asked him for the razor. That memory belonged to her now. Dean Wallace never confirmed anything. Not publicly, not privately. But when he died of complications 2 years later, the attending physician made a quiet note on his death certificate. Advanced immunodeficiency suspected. No medical history provided. His ex-wife buried him without ceremony. No one from Lakemont attended. The Department of Corrections launched an internal security assessment in the months after Geraldine's death. It lasted 17 days. They found no violations, no illegal contact. The final report concluded there is no evidence that Miss Mosley posed a health threat during her incarceration. Her death remains unexplained but not suspicious. behind closed doors. The staff referred to it differently. They called it the ghost file. Because even now, no one can explain how she did it. No cameras, no DNA trail, no direct evidence of physical contact with any of the guards. Just 4 broken bodies. And one woman who left the world without lifting a finger in anger. Only a whisper. In cell 12A, the pain is still fresh, but the air is heavy. New inmates complain of headaches. One claimed she heard breathing behind her in the middle of the night. Another said she woke up with a bloody lip and no memory of how it happened. Staff no longer assign long-term residents to that cell. Unofficial policy. Keep it empty when you can. No one says why, but everyone knows. What haunts Lakemont now isn't Geraldine's crimes. It's how quiet they were. No screams. No weapons. No chaos. Just loneliness weaponized into something viral. Affection repurposed as a trap. Vulnerability as design. Geraldine Mosley was never a monster in the traditional sense. She didn't rage. She didn't hurt for pleasure. She hurt because she understood one terrible truth. The most dangerous virus is the one that comes dressed as comfort. And in the end, she infected more than bodies. She infected the memory of safety. The idea that good men couldn't be broken. The illusion that boundaries inside prison walls actually held. When the story finally reached the local news, it came in a watered-down headline. Retired inmate dies in custody. For former officers treated for HIV. No one investigated further. No one traced the origin. No one asked how a 68-year-old woman with no visitors, no physical contact, and no escape attempts could rewrite the DNA of a prison's history. But inside Lakemont, they know. They remember her smile, her silence, the peppermint she always kept, the questions that cut deeper than knives. Some say she never meant to hurt anyone. Others say she planned every second of it. But either way, Geraldine Mosley is gone. They thought prison walls could contain her. They were wrong. If this story gripped you the way it gripped Lakemont from the inside out, subscribe now to the Family Crime Exposed. Because what happens behind bars doesn't stay hidden forever. Truth always bleeds through. Movie camera news stories. Real crimes. Dark secrets. Every week. Only here. Bell hit the bell so you never miss a confession that changes everything. Because the next name we speak could be yours. And somehow, she still hasn't left.